Welcome everyone, this is Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about a hot topic, relationships. Now, this is going to be, again, for the people who have been in long-term relationships. I'm even going to touch base, maybe a little bit of how a male can use some of this if he wants to be in a relationship or if he just wants to attract girls in a manner that is going to be relatable to the modern mindset. Because this is going to be, I guess, multilateral in the sense you can use this in a relationship, but you do have to use it differently than if you use it outside of the relationship. And the idea is going to be my most recent blog talking about love, hate, and indifference. There can be some similarities. It might seem like you love, you hate, you're indifferent, but in a relationship, the three are drastically different. And in a single life, they are drastically different too. So at some point, you have to be able to switch it. And if you don't know how to switch it when you go into a relationship, that's when typically relationships die. What I will say is when you give up your freedom, especially early on in the first 3 months of the relationship, and you got over the honeymoon phase, it's like, wait, what am I doing? Things change very quickly. And it's because there's some aspect that happens between love, hate, and indifference in the relationship. So let's take a look at my most recent blog, Love, Hate, and Indifference, and understand how it can help our relationships grow and prosper. All right, everyone, if you're new to the podcast, new to the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share the video and or audio to help build a community of like-minded individuals. Today, we're going to be talking about love, hate, and indifference. And this is something that I thought about quite frequently early on in my relationship or my marriage, is because you love the person, right? Because you got married with them. But then sometimes they do things that just kind of irk you. So you kind of hate the things they do. And then maybe you are even focused on some of your old things, right? Because before the house was clean and before I had all my stuff in the places that I left it and now they're not there. So you can hate those different aspects of the relationship, and it could cause some dismay. And at some point, if you're going through the crazy cycle, you can do stonewalling, you can have poor communication and things along those lines. But the part where you don't want to be is indifferent. You don't want to not care what your other partner is thinking, what your other partner is feeling, because that means you're already checked out. You're probably already looking for a new relationship. You don't care anymore. You're indifferent. You don't care what happens. But if you are in that idea of hate, of anger, it can be still a good thing. And you might ask, well, how is anger good in a relationship? Well, anger can be, or hate can be, full of passion, right? Because if you hate something, you have to be passionate about it. Some people think passion is only about love. I'm passionate about this. And if you're passionate about something, it should be a good thing. But you can be passionate about something and hate something too. We can look at multiple things in politics and what's going on in the world. You're passionate about movement. You don't necessarily have to love what had happened, but you're still passionate about what's going on. So you hate what's going on. You're passionate about that movement. And you don't want to be indifferent about something that happens in the world, right? So let's say there was a nuclear war and you're like, nuclear war, whatever, doesn't affect me, right? Not saying that it's not going to affect you, but you can be just indifferent, right? You don't care what goes on in the world. And that's the extreme, because we're talking about relationships today. And I want to use that idea of the nuclear bomb going off in your relationship and you're just indifferent. Whatever. I just don't care. But that nuclear bomb can be, hey, I think we need to go see a counselor. We need to go see someone. No, okay, yeah, sure. We will later, but it never happens. Maybe it could be getting divorce papers, right? It could be that. It could be them moving out of the house, the nuclear bomb. Again, the idea of something drastic happening, because now one person has become indifferent enough to not care anymore. They're checked out. They're mentally checked out. Just because you're indifferent, though, in a relationship it doesn't mean the relationship is over. I would rather be in a relationship where we're arguing passionately every single day than a relationship where the other person doesn't want to talk to me because they don't care about the relationship, or they don't care about me, or they don't care what ends up the relationship to be. I would rather have the argument. This is what most people don't realize. They think once they get the peace and the other person kind of has checked out, like, whatever, sure, okay, yeah. And now that person's already checked out, and it's only a matter of time until they're gone. This is why many relationships don't succeed, or they don't stand the test of time. Because happiness is going to be at every single level almost. If I feel loved, I feel happy. If I am, yelling at you, I'm trying to find happiness. And if I'm indifferent, you are not the person who's going to make me happy. Let me figure out who will. And as long as we are looking elsewhere instead of in a relationship for the fix, the relationship is going to dissipate, it's going to die. We need to continue to give our focus on the relationship. And this is where this blog goes. So that was the introduction for Love, Hate, and Indifference. I go in detail. I encourage everyone to read this blog. The link is in the description box below. You are going to want to read this one. Love, Hate, and Indifference is so interesting in our world today because we fall in love so quick, it seems like. Then we can hate so passionately because, again, we have so much going on in our life and in the world. We have become disconnected to the point where we have become fierce in how we address things. Like the arguments that we have are no longer little petty arguments. Like, fine, I'm going to go sleep at my mom's house. It's like, I don't need you anymore. We have gone a long way from, a moment of, a couple of nights away from each other to I'm going to do everything myself because we have a different mindset now. We don't necessarily need anybody. Guys don't need women. Women don't need men if they don't want to. Now, if you want to have a family, that's a different story. But yet, if you ask a woman on the street, most likely they say, oh, we don't need men. If you ask men on the street, they say, yes, we need women. We love women. So it's just a different mindset. However, guys love peace. Guys love that independence also. What is happening with relationships? What I can say from working with a lot of people with relationships, especially modern relationships, is that people don't want to miss out. Think of it as FOMO, fear of missing out. And they feel that if they're with someone, that they're missing out on someone else. Because it is so easy to be connected with so many people in the world. If we go back, let's say 60 years around there, no dating sites, online was kind of like whatever. This was something that, people didn't really think about. Like, I'm going to go find my girlfriend in Italy, or I'm going to go find my boyfriend in Mexico. It was like, well, my neighbor next door is pretty cool. Let's start a relationship there. Because the proximity of most marriages that happened early on in, the early 1900s, I believe it was like a 5-mile radius, maybe even less, of the people. And we know the world is not just a 5-mile radius, but that's how we treated it. Now we have so many more opportunities. We have so many more options. In a sense, we have, I guess you could say, a choice problem, because now we have all of these choices that we can do all of these different things, and we can set our standards so high because we have elevated ourselves. And in a sense, when we do that, we cut ourselves off from healing, from growing, from fixing, because we can always just go on to the next thing. So 50% of marriages end in divorce because guess what? Why even bother? If it's broke, why bother fixing it? But then again, some people are going to look at the idea of marriage as being forever. Okay, long lasting, long term. There are things that can happen in a marriage, right? You can have financial problems. You can have infidelity problems. You can have these, these differences, maybe between culture or religion that you didn't do the work in the beginning to figure out. It could be something that happened with family. There could be many reasons why you separate in a marriage. there could be many reasons why you separate in a marriage. But what you have to look at is, how did you get there? Maybe you were full of love, and then maybe you had these passionate arguments, because you're supposed to have arguments in a relationship, I believe. You go through the crazy cycle. Everyone does. And during those crazy cycle, moments and those arguments, you don't necessarily have to hate the person to the degree you don't want to be with them anymore. You can just hate how they act for that moment. And then when you're both cool enough, you reconcile, you come together, you communicate. What happens typically now is we retreat. We go into our own rooms, we go on our phones, we disconnect, and we do it enough where eventually we become indifferent. And the moment you become indifferent is the moment it becomes more challenging to fix the relationship. There's a book, I forget the guy's name. He's a divorce attorney, I believe, or he might be like a marriage counselor, but he was also married himself, and he also got a divorce himself. And one of the things he says is, or one of the books he has written was, if you're in my office, it's already too late. The reason why is because indifference. Because you're not going to be like, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, and then let's go see a counselor. Sometimes some people do, right? You could be one of those few percent of people who do that. But for most people, they become indifferent. And then there's typically one person that says, hey, I'm willing to give this a shot. And then there's maybe a person that says, yeah, sure. And then it doesn't happen. And then that's when they get that wake up call. And typically it's already too late because the person already checked out. They already packed their bags. They already signed the papers. They already paid the lawyer. You have to go through the divorce now. What I will say is that outside of a relationship, this is a little bit different. If you are a guy, this doesn't necessarily work so much if you're a woman, unless you're like, maybe, know how to play the game a little bit. But if you're a guy and you know how to be indifferent, that's actually a good thing to be. Now, you're not going to want to be hateful to anybody. But then again, being a jerk and an a-hole is actually a turn on for some girls. So they can say, I hate you, and stuff like that. And they can love you. So in a sense, hate and indifference for some guys can be a good thing. And then, of course, some guys could be romantic and love. So, that trifecta can be good for guys. What I have found being married is I'm totally indifferent to, ladies now. I can see a girl walking, girl in the gym, whatever, and I'm just totally different to her. And for some reason, it's like they're attracted to me. And I'm not saying that I'm not a good looking guy. But what I am saying is there's a difference between, I'm looking for a relationship and I'm already in a committed relationship. I'm not looking for anything, because it's almost like if you're not looking for it, it falls into your lap. And it's so funny because in my 20s, I'm like, oh, I got to go out and I have to go clubbing and I have to go get these girls and I have to go do all this work. And it's not that difficult. But when you do all the work and then you find out when you're 30, they're lining up at your door, you're like, wait, why did I do all that work in my 20s? Maybe to build up game, maybe to build up, a mindset that you can do this. Because I know some guys have a hard time talking to girls or starting relationships. This can be something that they look at. Love, hate, and indifference. What does that mean when you start your relationship? What does that mean when you're ending your relationship? It can be different for different people. The emotional landscape that is a relationship is going to be almost like you're walking on a tightrope. Some days you're lovey-dovey, everything is good. Some days you are, fighting each other and everything is good after. And some days you're fighting each other and then, something happens and then everything is good. It happens with like siblings, you're fighting and then everything is good. And sometimes in relationships, you're fighting and then everything is good. But then sometimes you can maybe do something, say something. And if the person doesn't know how to regulate their own emotions, that's when they become indifferent. And a lot of people today, like I said, they don't know how to regulate their emotions well enough anymore. It's one of those things where they're very passionate or they're not passionate enough. And if they're not willing to fight for their relationship, then they're going to be a person that's giving up their relationship. So some of the questions I like to give people who are starting relationships is we need to be able to ask questions that if something goes wrong in a relationship, what are you going to do? Ask a simple question, right? Hey, let's say we got in a fight. It's a really bad fight and I say I'm leaving and I'm not going to come back until you apologize. What would you do? Right? Just ask that question, right? It could be a question like, hey, we had a fight and I told you to sleep on the sofa. What would you do? It could be that. Now, we can give a whole bunch of different types of questions of the bad stuff, but let's look at what would you do if I stopped loving you? What would you do if I didn't care if we broke up? What would you do if I was a person that would go out and speak with other guys and dance with other guys or dance with other girls and date other girls and stuff like that? What would you do? These questions can be impactful, but then they can be a wake-up call too. Impactful meaning it can spark a desire. Like, I don't want anyone else to have it, right? Men are territorial with their ladies. And most ladies who love and respect their men are going to be territorial also. So that's going to be a good fit. For, a man who doesn't necessarily care, what his woman is doing, there is a possibility that she can fall out of love, become indifferent, and find happiness in someone else. But maybe a guy, on the other hand, might be able to go out and not necessarily fall out of love or become indifferent because he's getting maybe what he wanted or what he desired. Now, this is not an aspect of what does a relationship need in order to thrive. This is only the aspect of how love, hate, and indifference can be different. Because if I asked you what the opposite of love was, you would say hate. But yet, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Because if you are indifferent, you are no longer loving. I would rather you hate me and then us still work together so we can work toward love again. But the moment someone checks out, it's a lot more challenging to get back. So the person has to have a strong mindset. They have to have a strong connection with the person. They have to have a strong reason to stay with that person. I have seen and I have worked with too many people who are going through divorce, and it's because they have gone into this indifference phase. Sometimes I get people who are in the hate phase and they're trying to tell their partner who's indifferent, hey, we need to work this out, and it doesn't work. If someone checks out, it's almost like a uphill battle. It's like, can we do this? Maybe we can do this, but it's not going to be easy. So I encourage everyone, this blog right here is going to be a wonderful read. You're going to want to read this one because I go into detail in what a good relationship means and how you can make it thrive for a long time. Because if you're just always focusing on the love of the relationship, the honeymoon phase, the passion, the good times, the planning, you are not going to truly understand what a relationship is. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to have moments when you wanted to wring out their neck or something or punch them in the face. Those moments are going to be there. Not saying you should act on those moments, but the one thing you don't want to do is become indifferent. You do not want to care about the individual. You always want to care about them. You want to make sure they get home safe. You want to make sure that they're in a good place mentally and that you're not in a toxic type of mindset. Because the moment that starts to happen and communication dies is going to be the moment when the relationship starts to dissipate. So though relationships can be complex, we do have to look at them for what they are. And what most relationships are going to be opportunities. An opportunity for you to work and to grow with somebody. And you might work and grow with someone for some time and you might say you love them. But then you might love them enough to let them go if it's not a good fit anymore. Sometimes people are in phases in their life. And sometimes a person or people, they don't grow together. We have to do our best, especially if you get married young, to grow together and to understand what people want. The people who come for relationships and they get marriage out, for my coaching, what we look at is not only what is right in front of us on paper. We look at what we can't necessarily see. What does the future hold? We look at all different aspects of it. And if the future looks promising, then we continue, we keep going, we make the moves, we make the adjustments. For the individuals who do not do this planning, it's almost like they get blindsided and they're like, what happened? Where am I? And then these are the people who get divorces, separate. These are the people who said that they're not happy. They were worried about that they're missing out, something in life or something along those lines. It's because they didn't do the work long term. For me, it's about the long term. I understand about compound interest. And in a relationship, it's almost the same thing. You're investing in your relationship. A relationship can be a liability for men. We know that. But it can also be a liability for women. But if we're continually investing in a relationship and we're growing and we're doing the best we can, if your person can't appreciate that, maybe that's on them. Maybe that's a sign that you should find someone who will appreciate you. And appreciation, again, is not so much about if they love you, if they buy you flowers, if they write you poems, if they send you good morning texts. Everyone loves differently. Everyone wants to receive love differently. It's a great book, Love and Respect. Read the book. You're going to learn so much. What I will say is, you can probably not love a man. As long as you respect him, he'll stay with you. Now, he likes to love, don't get me wrong. Same thing with a woman. You can maybe disrespect her at some times, and she'll put up with it. But as long as you love her the way she needs to be loved, she'll stay, right? What we would like is to make both and find a balance with what your partner prefers. Everyone has a preference. Some people like Italian food. Some people like Mexican food. Maybe your partner only likes eating Mexican food, doesn't like eating Italian food, so you're never going to take him out to an Italian restaurant. Maybe if you're mad or something at her, you'll be like, all right, let's go get some Italian. She's going to be even more mad at you because you took her to get some Italian food and she doesn't like it. And you order her a bunch of food and stuff that she doesn't like. And then you make her pay. Oh man, you're going to be sleeping on the sofa maybe, right? Who knows? But what I will say is relationships are dynamic. Sometimes you're going to be working on them every single day, it seems like. But then sometimes it's almost effortless. Because if you create a routine in your relationship where you're having conversation, you create those moments in your day, your relationship is going to be a walk in the park. And not to say that every relationship is going to be a walk in the park. Apparently, there's a thing called the 7-year itch, where something happens in your relationship every 7 years. And I'm so curious about it because I talk about this to relationship coaches and family coaches. And they say that if you are preparing for something bad to happen in your life, then something bad is going to happen in your life or in your relationship. And I say, okay, that's valid. Because I don't necessarily think about in my relationship like, oh man, something bad is going to happen next year. We've been married 4 years. We have 3 years left before something happens. I don't think about that. It's very possible that something can happen. But we have, an argument maybe once every 6 months or a year. I mean, we don't argue. It makes no sense for us to argue. We're both adults. We both have good mindsets. We can say, hey, this is an issue. What's going on? If you're stressed because of work or you're stressed because you have a lot of obligations, that's on you. You gave yourself those things. Just like me having a business. I gave myself this business. Or I guess you could say this problem or this stress or whatever you want to consider it. I gave myself this. I'm not going to go to her and say, the reason I'm so stressed out is because I have a business and I got to feed you and I got to feed the kids. It makes no sense to do that. That's my job, or the job I gave myself, or the job I believe I should be doing, or the job we agreed on. Maybe all of the above. Figure out what you need to do in your relationship. And if you don't know the opposite of what love is, it is indifference. And if you don't know how to stop indifference from happening, that is when you need to go seek therapy. You need to go get a counselor. You need to go get a relationship coach. and you need to make sure you don't fall into this indifference. Yes, you can get out, but I have seen so many people who come when they're in that indifferent type of mindset and they're already done. And it's a possibility that they will keep you in their back pocket because they know they have you, especially if you still love them, or maybe, you still want them and they're indifferent. They might just string you along. So this is both for male and female. So pay attention to that. I don't want you to be in a bad situation. I want you to be in the best situation. And if you are in a rough situation, again, ReardenConcepts.com, get yourself a consultation, get yourself some coaching, put yourself back into the relationship that you desire. Maybe it's the one that you're currently in, or maybe it's one that you have to start. Whichever place you're in, we will be here to help you along that path. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, email me coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone take care.